Welcome back to the show. This is Phil Vischer. This is Phil Vischer Podcast. I'm here with Skye, Jethani.
Hello, Phil.
Hi. And Christian Taylor. Wait a minute. Christian, you got your hair done.
A little bit. It was a perm.
It's a perm.
They're back.
Christian got a
They're
perm.
back.
This is Matthew Milliner, doctor, and you also have an MDiv.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do.
So you're-
I have Master Divinity,
Wow.
which is the most arrogant name for a degree conceivable.
Master of
You've
Divinity.
mastered divinity.
That's
How
the only
is this-
reason I got one.
Well,
Yeah. So
yeah.
you're really Dr. Reverend.
Or is
well,
it
no, but see, I
Reverend
never got
Doctor?
ordained.
You never
so
got
you
ordained.
can get
Oh,
the
okay.
degree without getting ordained. So I
that's
did
true.
not take it all the way. as they
Okay.
say.
Well, we will get to Matt's street cred shortly, right after we do the theme song. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Skye.
Hi, Phil.
Not Christian, too, because she's not here. We've got Dr. Reverend Matt Milliner here for you. Say hi.
Greetings.
Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. That's either everyone's favorite part of the podcast or least favorite part of the podcast. There's really no middle ground.
But I've
on
been so
ukulele.
close to it. I know a lot of you out there have wanted to be as close to that ukulele as I was, and I can tell you,
It was frighteningly
it
close.
was extremely.
It's a little intimidating, isn't
special.
it? Somebody sent me online or Twitter, and I tweeted it out to everyone else. Someone built, the guitar in Mad Max that was
Yeah.
a flamethrower.
Right.
Yeah, a guy made a ukulele that does the same thing, a ukulele that throws flames. And I thought that would be perfect for me because he's always insulting my ukulele.
I think
Like
if you're going to have
ding, ding,
if you're gonna have an
there
instrument,
goes your hair.
oh yeah, I'm worried about
Right
that.
off.
If you're going to have a flamethrower, don't you want an instrument with a longer neck?
To get the flame farther away from
Yeah,
you?
it's
If you're a wimp.
okay. You clearly are not.
Well, I'm just glad you brought this up because I have a double stroller and I have a 1-year-old son, and,
Yeah.
and he's like right up there in the front. I mean, just like almost, over the wheels. And I call it
Yeah.
my Mad Max stroller because it's like I just
yeah,
need to
yeah.
have fluids going into my
Right.
veins or
And do you
something to
have
get the full.
a
I haven't put the
mask
muzzle on him
He
yet.
needs the
He
muzzle.
doesn't need it yet.
Well, once he
but
starts biting,
then I'll strap it on there.
can you make the double stroller whip around and then drive backwards?
That would be. I'm going to work on that.
Whip around and.
But I do have a pole by which I steal things from
Yes.
opposing strollers.
Oh. And do you keep your concubines in the trailer?
A few, just a few.
Doctor-
Most of them are at home, but a few.
Dr. Non-Reverend Matthew Milliner. Non-Reverend, future Reverend. Do you think you'll ever get
I
ordained?
do not think so.
Okay.
I do not think
then why
that is
did you
my
get an
calling.
MDiv if you're not going to use it in a flaunting manner?
Because theology fascinates me, and I love learning more about God.
You could have gotten a THM.
Wow. Was that a
Isn't
nice
I
answer?
went pious on it.
That was, yeah. that
Thumb.
was-
I could have gotten a thumb.
Got it, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
filled with pie. Dr. Milliner, see on the website, it says Dr. Milliner. Dr. Milliner teaches across the range of art history. He's a professor at Wheaton College. That's who we're talking to here. And his scholarly specialization, this is fantastic, by the way, is Byzantine and medieval art.
Keeping it fresh.
Isn't Byzantine also an insult?
See,
Yeah,
that's
this
the
is so
problem.
Byzantine.
Yeah.
It's the
But it means-
empire that got short shrift, so now it's become an insult.
You have to be smart to get through it, right? That's what something's Byzantine. It's like hard to
No, that's labyrinthine.
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 Well, but
Is
so
that
many
the same
things.
as Byzantine?
no.
Well, Byzantine is kind
What does it mean?
of political intrigue and not straightforward because they were because no one knew enough about this great Christian empire that lasts for over 1,000 years. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
No one knew about it, and they wanted to kind of push it aside, so they named it after the fishing village that was first there before Constantinople was founded. And so that's why it's basically they're making fun of it, just like the term Gothic is making fun
Byzantium.
of this art as
Right?
of the Goths. Yeah.
Byzantium?
Yeah, Byzantium, but it's completely insensitive that we would still call it
Okay.
that. It's that
I'm
important.
sorry, Matthew.
I'm still
That's
grieving.
really sad.
Yeah.
That's really sad. His focus is on how images inform contemporary visual culture. He has published widely in academic and popular venues, has given scholarly presentations at the University of Chicago, American University, Indiana University, Duke University, and a Waffle House in Tulsa. I added that part. It's not really in there. In 2014...
Hey, I did a Cracker Barrel on that tour,
You did a Cracker Barrel. We were talking about Cracker Barrel. He organized the scholarly symposium at the Art Institute of Chicago entitled Envisioning the Eucharist. I bet that brought the crowds in. Well, was it popular with the Catholic audience? Were people who generally know what that word means?
There's a lot of art, though, that...
Though the tons,
I know.
Tons
Covers
so
that.
They came.
Yeah.
The people
Okay.
came. We had to hire a bouncer.
You got a commission?
Of
like
course.
A percentage
That's
of the,
the only reason I do
of the
this.
door?
I do it for the funds, exactly.
Which explored how art functions as visual theology. He is a National Humanities Center Summer Institute for Advanced Study Fellow.
I got to update this.
Wow.
Man, do I still have that on?
And he was recently appointed a member of the Curatorial Advisory Board of the United States Senate.
Wow.
What is that?
Yeah, what is that? It sounds good.
It sounds fantastic.
So the Senate has all of this art that it has to take care of from ambassadors who will give a gift.
Yeah.
And, of course, it has this amazing building that thankfully outlasts the given reigns of senators.
Yes.
That is, you could say, the real imprint of democracy, not these fleeting careers. And so they need an advisory board of people who consult the Senate curator as to how to deal with given pieces of art and the architecture. And so I got appointed to that board.
How does that happen? How do you get? Was it because of your bow tie?
That was the reason.
Dr. Milliner is wearing a sporty bow tie and is known for his bow ties if you look him up online. How did they?
Seriously, I actually got a call. And they said, would you be interested in doing this? And I gave them 3 names of people who would be better.
Did they reveal who they were, or was it kind of a...
believe it or not, I actually had to do...
Matthew Milliner?
I had to do the FBI check.
Really?
They had to do the clearance. So I gave them 3 names of people, because why would you want a Byzantine specialist at the Senate Curatorial Advisory Board? But so I gave them 3 people.
One might ask that question.
Yeah, I asked that question. And so I gave them the people, but then they came back to me and said, we want you to do this. So I said, okay. But the great thing is I have 2 students who now have been placed on Capitol Hill in internships through those connections. So that's the cool thing. It's good for Wheaton art history students. Oh, absolutely.
So they're there to work on the art side?
They're
not
there
on the policy side?
Only on the art side.
Okay.
So they're there to kind of help
and they stand
protect
in front
the paintings.
of the paintings and say, don't touch that?
Exactly. That's their job. They have they're equipped with
Sparky
electrocution implements, tasers. They've got everything.
So how long is your term on that, or is it indefinite?
I've been reappointed, so it has been renewed.
And who makes these appointments?
Well, this is
Did you
a
have
mystery.
to go to a hearing in the Senate to get approved?
I did not, but I got to go into the Senate chamber and see everyone's seat, which is kind of fun. I don't think you can do that on the commoner tour. I got to be on the inside. Wow. Very exciting, very exciting. So
okay, well, we're just going to do a little bit of news today because we want to talk to Dr. Non-Reverend Matthew. It was a good week, and a bad week for Pastafarians.
Uh-oh.
Is it Pastafarians or Pastafarians?
Pastafarians. Sorry, my mistake.
Because it's like Rastafarians.
If you're a seafarer that eats pasta, you're a pasta seafarer. But if you're just a Pastafarian, then you're a Pastafarian.
Good to know.
Okay. New Zealand Pastafarians tie knot in first recognized wedding. The first Pastafarian wedding. You know what Pastafarianism
Of course I do.
is?
Yes,
okay.
indeed.
You might want to inform our listeners.
It's a parody religion. They worship the flying spaghetti monster. And it came about primarily as a response to the Christian argument made that you can't prove God doesn't exist, so let us keep believing that he does. And the response was, well, there's lots of things you can't prove. Actually, what it started out as, and I believe this was Bertrand Russell, started out with the celestial teapot and said, for example, you can't prove there's not a celestial teapot orbiting Venus. But it doesn't mean there's any evidence to say there is. And celestial teapot, I mean, that's kind of fun, but not super fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so more recently with New Atheism, we came up with the flying spaghetti monster. So you say, hey, I don't worship God, and you don't worship, the flying spaghetti monster or Zeus or any other deity. It just doesn't make sense. And then people said, hey, this is so much fun. We're having so much fun with this idea. Let's say it's a religion. and that were Pastafarians.
And in New Zealand, apparently, they said okay.
And in New Zealand, donned in eye patches and a spaghetti bridal headdress, 2 New Zealanders have celebrated the first legally recognized Pastafarian marriage on board a pirate ship, in a milestone of recognition for the bizarre global religion. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, whose stated beliefs are in a god made of spaghetti, have amassed followers around the world. Followers wear colanders on their heads and revere pirates. I hadn't heard the pirate part.
Oh, yeah, that's a central plank.
What does that have to do with pasta?
Well, what does anything? What does a monster have to do with pasta or flying?
Well, because he's God. Okay, I guess that makes sense.
I think they explain it in the article, don't they?
They revere pirates, insist that they are not a spoof church, and that their beliefs are genuine. The group also celebrates holidays such as Talk Like a Pirate Day. Again, that makes
I think a lot of us celebrate that, though. It doesn't make us
like a pirate
Pastafarians. Kind of like Christmas.
Yeah.
Does the Flying Spaghetti Monster permit divorce? That's my question, because I don't think this marriage founded upon a mockery is going to last very long.
I'm imagining the way you kiss the bride is sort of like in Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah.
That would seal the deal.
That would seal the deal. That's sort of the...
Fantastic. I'm not sure
there we
the
go.
Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster has a particularly robust theology of marriage.
They apparently do with pirates,
Or
however.
anything else. New Zealand's government earlier this month agreed to an application from member Karen Martin to become a legal marriage celebrant, means someone who can officiant, after the group was deemed to comply with the country's regulations. And the vows went something like this: "Does ye take this feisty wench to be ye lawfully wedded best mate? Does ye promise to stay at the helm even when seas are rough?"
You can do a much better pirate than that, Phil.
Yeah, I'm not up to it. Karen, the self-declared minestrone, asked the couple. Would you feel good about starting your marriage as a joke? I don't know that I would feel... I mean, a lot of people get married in Disney World, and they want Mickey Mouse at their ceremony.
But that's because for them,
But they
for
really...
some people, Disney is really a religion.
Yeah, and they believe in it.
Right.
No one really believes in this Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Right. But they
So-
believe in mocking religion.
Yeah, but so much that you want to make it the focus of your wedding?
There's setups for conversion. They're just it's all gonna buckle. They're gonna be like, all right, we want something real. Guess what? This thing doesn't
You know
exist.
what? There's too much carbs in this religion. I won't need meat. Okay, bad week for Pastafarians.
I thought
Trouble.
I read going back to the pirate thing, though, if you're reading the same article I read this week on it, they said that the reason they do the pirate thing is because they believe that all people descended from pirates. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah, I did read that somewhere.
Because otherwise the pirate thing has no connection.
You're right. They believe all people descended, but they don't really believe that.
Well, you know what I
Because
mean.
it doesn't make any sense.
If you were going to make up your
They're
own
pretending. They
food-based religion,
Why would you pick pirates? They don't.
why would you pick pasta?
They don't bathe.
And isn't spaghetti too ethnocentric a pasta?
That's true.
To represent all people.
Yeah.
They need a Pentecost. They need to bring all the nations in, and they're
Right.
not there yet.
So science says we all emanated from Africa,
What is the African noodle?
and Pastafarianism says we all emanated from Italy. It's in conflict with science,
I think you're right.
and yet it's the most popular religion
Although
of
there are
atheists.
quite a few pirates in Africa now. Somali pirates, for example.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but it's recent. That's recent. Do you know of any pirate art, that includes pasta?
I don't.
Say from the Byzantine era?
No, but it's interesting though. I mean, I hesitate to go on this tangent. However, I think it was
We never hesitate.
Well, we'll go with it anyway. So I think I can't remember. It's a Danish woman who drew the first Flying Spaghetti Monster, and the inspiration was Michelangelo's image of God the Father in the Sistine Chapel. And I often use that as an example of the caricature of the Christian God. We believe that Christians, that Jesus is incarnate, right? The incarnate second person of the Trinity. But the first person of the Trinity is beyond all our imagining.
Right.
Nevertheless, Michelangelo
We insist on imagining
You know,
him.
it gives us this, and it's always interesting to me if you look at the Mock Gods Twitter account. It's an image of Michelangelo. If you look at atheist meme database, you will see always Michelangelo. So in some senses, of course, it's ridiculous what they're doing, but I want to say, well, maybe we made it easier for you with these artificial prepackaged deities that we created that were not authorized.
Right.
And that's what's nice. I think one of the nice things about Reformation iconoclasm, the breaking of images, is that we may have made some missteps here that are still having consequences today. So that's one way of doing a mea culpa to try to, you know.
Are you saying that if Michelangelo had been more theologically accurate and had not depicted God as an old man with a beard, we wouldn't have Pastafarianism?
Well, to put it that way is a very extreme formulation.
This is a podcast.
Well, that's right. Let's get extreme. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
No, but
That's what we wanted to hear. Put it on a T-shirt.
There we go. Now we can say. So there is a sense, though, is that we generate the caricature of the Christian God. And for all you out there who want to have fun seeing someone just rip apart the new atheist, which I have guilty pleasure of mine, David Bentley Hart's The Experience of God. He just does such a wonderful job of undoing. What was that? Was that a
Product placement. Though.
Product placement. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a great book.
Yeah.
And he simply.
An angel got a nickel.
Yes, and this is my enjoyable. No, okay, but he does such a wonderful job of showing you how. It's really hard to find a Nietzsche today, like a real serious atheist who's going to drink the whole thing all the way to the dregs.
Right.
And he's saying it's a surface reality, and you already have this caricature of what Christianity is that you're dismissing. And so in some senses, what if you just got past both that Michelangelo creation, as Michelangelo himself wanted to do and did later in life, and this to the God behind the God you don't believe in? And that would be something to found a marriage upon.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. There was an article recently talking about, what if we do find aliens? How would that affect Christianity? And this is from a skeptical point of view. And their point was, it'll break down Christianity because Christians believe they are made in the image of God. So if an alien looks different than us, ta-da!
As if C.S. Lewis didn't write the space trilogy long before Star Wars ever happened and colonized all of that with his Christian imagination anyway.
They don't know that.
They don't know that.
But it's a misunderstanding of the image of God and all
of course.
Sorts of.
And that's the beauty of the silent planet. That even if we did find aliens, that he chose this humble place to take on our flesh. It would actually make it more beautiful.
It's the beauty of Larry Norman's "He's an Unidentified Flying Object." Have you ever heard that song?
Actually, yes.
And we are back to the flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the conspiracy theory about Michelangelo leading to Pastafarianism makes sense because he was, of course, Italian.
Well, see, there it is. Now we've got a book.
We have like a Da Vinci Code
Where's the
Part 2
bell?
Yeah.
Okay. Bad week for Pastafarians. A federal court. Now we're back to the United States, where everyone thinks clearly about all issues. A federal court has ruled that the flying spaghetti monster, referred to as his flying noodliness by fans and followers, is not, alas, the object of a real religion. This is actually interesting. Federal court, Nebraska, 16-page decision. 16 pages. A federal court had to write about the flying spaghetti monster for 16 pages, and our dollars paid for it.
Or at least, it's federal court. Yeah, it is our dollars.
Thank you very much. The U.S. District Court of Nebraska ruled on April 12th that Pastafarianism is satire, not sacred, and that anyone who thinks it is a religion has made an error of, quote, basic reading comprehension. This is not a question of theology, the ruling read. The FSM gospel, FSM, you got to know the lingo.
Right.
Let's talk about the FSM gospel, is plainly a work of satire meant to entertain while making a pointed political statement. To read it as religious doctrine would be little different from grounding a, quote, religious exercise on any other work of fiction. Now, obviously, that's where skeptics fight back and say, well, wait a minute, that's what Christianity is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what Islam is. It's what Mormonism is.
Well, this gets to something we've talked about all the time in the podcast, which is the difficulty in creating a legal definition for religion.
Right. Right.
But at least this judge recognizes satire, when something is created with a satirical point,
Right.
it's hard to say.
So that would differentiate Pastafarianism even from Scientology, which is,
Which was created for purely monetary reasons.
well,
Wait, haven't you seen all those Scientologist churches in the poor neighborhoods of the world? It's where they really
Yeah.
flourish, because that's the...
there are people who
Genuinely believe it.
It wasn't satire. Was it?
I don't
to begin
know.
with?
It could have been.
I thought with
L. Ron
Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard,
Yeah.
it was a kind of a challenge. It was like can you make a religion?
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think,
really?
I
So it
yield
may
on
be
that. That might
closer
not be
to-
true.
It may be closer to flying spaghettiism.
But they did get their tax exempt status through nefarious means.
I say wait for at least 1,000 years before you found your life on a religion. Give it 1,000 years of lead time, and then don't.
I don't know how long you're going to last, Dr. Non-Reverend Matthew, but I'm not going to last 1,000 years. I don't have that kind of time.
Well, no. The
I don't
religion
have
has
I
to
need
be
to
around
make a
1,000
decision.
years. You do. Well, the religion, I'm saying, you have to. It
don't
has to
join a
have a
religion.
lot of
Yeah,
lead
yeah.
time. It's gone through its early phases. You've seen some difficulties.
Is that the vetting process?
That should
would you
be the
say?
vetting process, which is why-
millennial vetting
Oh
process?
yeah. Give it at least what I say. Give it a couple. I like my religions, with deep roots.
Right.
5,000
so you
years.
think
give or take.
Luther jumped the gun?
No, but Luther is reforming Christianity.
Yeah,
he
but
is
they
not.
didn't give it a couple thousand years.
No,
They had
he's
1,500.
he sees himself
Not a
in
couple.
continuity with the church that came before.
Yeah, but it wasn't a couple thousand years. It was 1,500.
There was no.
1,500.
No, he's just making some course corrections.
Okay.
On a thing that's been around for a long time.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, Dr. Matthew,
Non-reverend, please
No.
address me by my title.
non-reverend Matt, wrote a piece for a book. Here's the book. Can I hold the book?
Oh, of course
I
you
want to hold
can.
the book up
Of course
for,
you can.
our viewers at home. The Image of God in an Image-Driven Age.
There we go.
We dinged the book. Edited by Beth Felker-Jones and Jeffrey W. Barbo.
Two fantastic Wheaton College professors.
Friends of yours? Oh, we
Absolutely, they're wonderful.
And why do we have you here then?
And you wrote.
I don't know. Get them here. I'm just a
He
placeholder.
wears a bow tie.
Right.
It's more fun. And you wrote a chapter for it.
I did.
Your chapter, also, you wrote a piece on your website called The Cardinal Virtues and the Walking Dead. That was fun, too.
Well, thank you
Did
for reading
people
that.
enjoy that?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard to monitor
You were
these things.
placing the 4 cardinal virtues
I think all Wheaton
into
College
the context
profs
of the
have been
Walking
required
Dead.
to shut comments off on their blogs, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. You wrote, so your chapter is In Praise of Iconoclasm,
Yeah.
which raises a very serious question. What the heck is iconoclasm?
Yeah. The breaking of images. That's the simple what the word means.
The breaking of images.
Yeah. So if
breaking.
I were to take this, not want the company associated with this, I could just
Yeah.
I hate that company and
He's
just
mangling
destroy
his
that
Starbucks
image.
So
cup
that's
for those of
the-
you listening.
Technical definition of the word, but historically, how is it used? What is it typically referred to?
Here's Wikipedia says iconoclasm is the destruction of religious icons and other images or monuments for religious or political motives. Over time, the word, usually in the adjectival form,
Adjectival.
I spent most of my morning in the adjectival form. Adjectival? Seriously?
I think so.
I second that.
Okay. Has also come to refer to aggressive statements or actions against any well-established status quo. So if you're an iconoclast, you're breaking the status quo.
Well,
Yeah.
but more recently, this is often associated with the wonderful work of ISIS.
Yes, they are iconoclasts.
Yes.
They are.
In the classical sense.
Yes,
in
they
the
are.
worst sense, we might say. Yeah,
And the
worst
Taliban
In the
did this as well.
adjectival and nounval sense.
But so is Josiah, right? So is the great reforming king of the Old Testament and others who
yeah,
say,
he busted up stuff.
get those Asherah poles out of the temple. This is not good.
Yeah.
And so this leaves a huge question. It's like there's a really uncomfortable connection between what ISIS is doing and what you see in the Old Testament.
And then in the Reformation,
Of course.
there was some of that too.
And so I was trying to kind of weave through that to find this middle ground that says, look, what ISIS is doing is horrible. But at the same time, we can't just say, hey, every imaginable image, bring it into my home, bring it into my screen. Of course, what's that middle ground look like? And so in so doing, that was the
Right.
argument.
So you quote
I tried to
someone
make.
who says, we live in an optocracy.
Ooh.
We are ruled by what hits our eyes.
I love that.
And the
word.
book sales go down.
Optocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unpack that.
Yeah, my job is to try to contend with the people who run the roost in my discipline, which is art history. And so they'll throw around words, neologisms, coming up with new words to describe things. And the word optocracy is thrown around by a contemporary non-Christian theorist who is talking about this, the way advertisements work, the way you are manipulated by the things on your phone. And when I heard that, I want to say, you know what? There's some helpful stuff there. I can learn from that. And I want to kind of take that word and use it to describe our resistance as Christians against the images that surround us.
Okay.
I mean, what does it mean when you see an advertisement to, have you ever, and it's a wonderful mental exercise because when your defenses are down, you just kind of, it just washes over you. And that's what it counts on, right? After that dramatic moment in the show, and then slip you right into the advertisement. What does it mean to be mentally alert enough to speak back to the advertisement, to say, no, that will not make me happy?
So
that's iconoclastic.
You talked about the interesting contrast of clicking on a video to watch ISIS destroying religious images, but before you could watch that, this really glamorous CoverGirl ad came up, and you had to watch all of these images of, was it Katy Perry?
Yeah, I was forced to. Yeah. And it's just like the absurdity of our society.
Yeah, it's like we can't show you the destruction of these images considered pagan by these crazy people until we show you these new pagan images from a new, and you make the point that, is this our new Babylon?
Right. And can I share another dramatic moment like that?
Yes.
Because I'm sure we all have ones to share, but that was just one. I was like, what is this world I live in here? So I'm watching a documentary on Mount Athos, which is a peninsula in northern Greece filled with monks who at this very moment are lifting up praise to Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's just popular. That's all they do.
Okay.
And it's an extraordinary branch of Christianity, this Eastern Orthodox. So anyway, I'm reading, this is what I study in the Byzantine world, and I'm watching it and enjoying the interviews with these monks, some of whom I've met, some of the monasteries I've been to. It's really exciting. And there's this one monk perched on the edge of a cliff praising God and praying. And then the transition to the ad. And it is a man walking his family on a cliff, looking healthy and virile, and it is advertising a pharmaceutical. A man in his 50s who needs a special jolt to keep going into this phase of his life. And I was like, no, that really just happened.
Two cliff experiences.
Yeah. But
two cliffhangers.
But one is the cliff of faith in God and trusting in Him, and the other is trusting in this product. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, talk about the divine
Do people get
commodity.
really annoyed watching TV with you?
Yes.
Would you just let us watch the show?
Exactly.
So you were watching the Super Bowl. What happened when you were watching the Super Bowl a year ago?
Oh, yes. My wife needs to come on the next show. She'll describe this in more detail. So should I go into the Super Bowl?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there. I'm watching the Super Bowl, and this is not the last one, but the one before. And I'm like, okay, so let's see here. So how do we think of America? Is it there are all kinds of ways you can think about it from the biblical perspective. The famous like Romans 13 versus Revelation 13. You've heard that parallel, of course. Romans 13 is submit to the government, and Paul is right about that. But then Revelation 13 is, guess what? Government's the whore of Babylon. And beware, run, flee.
A woman.
A woman.
Atop.
Oh, yes.
A beast.
A woman atop a beast.
Yeah.
That's the description in Revelation 13. And and it shows up over and over again in the book of Revelation. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, I'm watching the Super Bowl and there's Katy Perry on top a beast, kind of astride this monster.
She came out on a giant lion.
And again, I tried to make the point. I'm not saying that she is the prophesied.
You're not saying
whore of Babylon.
Is the whore of Babylon.
She is not. I am not saying that.
Okay.
But it's one of those things where, like, if I had to use really be clear about that. But if I had to, if you told me. Totally, let's just, clean palate, like, how do you understand this society using the Bible? That would be the first passage I go to. And it was just like, wow. And what's fascinating is that Katy Perry her father was a minister. She has a Christian background, and I found myself making this comment, but also praying for her, and she is clinging to certain kinds of Christianity. And I'm realizing there was a wonderful moment where she said this kind of flash of faith arose up in her, and she said she prayed that God would help her straddle the beast well, I guess. And then she saw a stagehand look across the way and said, "You got this." And she took that as confirmation from God that you've got this. And
she would ride the lion.
Right,
well
indeed. The Lord is with you. Whatever it is, if you're, whatever you're trying to sell,
all for the glory.
Of course, all for the glory.
Yeah.
And so what I tried to say is like, okay, I made the case. I'm like, look, let's just say for a moment, I believe prophecy happened. So that was a genuine prophecy, and it really was the Lord who wanted to confirm with her in the words, "You've got this," but the accent was on the wrong syllable. You've got this, Katie. Is this all you want? You could have me. So that was what I was trying to suggest, and
that's when your wife said, "Would you just be quiet?"
Yeah, she said, "Please, can we watch this?"
Yeah, we want to watch the dancing sharks. Shut up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just let's be entertained here.
We talk a lot about doing culture making. That Christians should enter into culture making. You say we also sometimes need to do culture breaking. So you
can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Always, it's not a podcast if Stalin isn't quoted.
We should rise up and bust stuff.
Let's do it right now. Starting in this studio.
Is this from watching The Walking Dead too much?
It might be
culture breaking. What do you mean? What do you mean we need to break culture?
I mean, I use the analogy of Jeremiah. Right, he's in a bad situation. Right, Israel, because of its idolatry, is a lot of the elite are deported, brought to Babylon, and in a position where the Daniel-like situation, where the Jews are in this pagan society. If they were to get up and say, "All right, let's start busting stuff," they would be killed. So they have to have a more strategic culture breaking, and that's precisely what Jeremiah does in his incredible rhetoric against idols. That are, in some biblical scholars might say, written in the context of Babylon, directed against this society, but at the same time for the benefit of Babylon. Don't trust in these stupid little dragons. Trust in the true God of Israel, who, believe it or not, you brought us to you, but you have no idea what you just let into Babylon. You've let in the representatives of the true God. And so this strategic breaking, we don't have to be as crass as literally breaking images as ISIS does, because we know that Jesus is the true image, and he is the one who dethrones them without the need for our assistance. In fact, there are great images from medieval Christianity of Jesus and Mary and Joseph showing up in Egypt. Of course, they would have gone when they were fleeing Herod, and all the idols falling. They're just like, "Whoa, the real one's here!" Anubis is like, he falls over, and that's in some senses the beauty of our faith. And we also have false images of ourselves. And Jesus doesn't negotiate with them. He wants to crucify them. It is no longer I who live.
Okay.
It's Christ who lives in me. Paul's understanding that he's been crucified with Christ. That's what baptism is. It's a ritual killing, which is kind of disconcerting to hear it that way. It's not just for a nice little Sunday picnic. This is the false you that is held hostage by Satan and succumbing to sin. Jesus is going to put you to death, and then you are going to rise in him. That's iconoclastic.
Okay, so let's go back to the art world. Modern art is an ally.
Can be. Can be.
Modern art can be an ally. That caught me off guard. Modern art can be an ally. Modern art is...
You actually read this. I'm so glad.
Yeah, thank you. Is about...
He didn't give me the opportunity.
He sent it recently. Right. I forgot to forward it. Sorry. Modern art is about destroying images.
Can be about that, yes.
Can be.
And because what happens in modern art is there's a lot of real avant-garde, and the term simply means those who are ahead of the army who are doing the first fighting. modern art realizes that a consumer-drenched society is not necessarily good, and modern art some currents within it want to resist this consumer society, as Christians should.
So there's commentary on, but also subversion of
completely
things that we hold very dear in a consumerist society.
Right, like, look, this product can't save you, and so there's some. So you might walk into an art exhibit, you're expecting some pretty picture that's going to please you, and it's going to shock you because not just sometimes because it's out to attack you, but it's like, look, don't trust in this consumer. Right. You don't see advertisements that kind of deconstruct and destroy themselves. They want you to believe them wholesale. Do not talk back, just receive. Right. And modern art wants to complicate that sometimes. So I give examples of, there's one artist, I think Christopher Williams is his name. He takes advertisements and picks them apart and makes you think twice. Now that's exciting. But what's funny is then you can go buy the catalog for that artist for a pretty penny in the bookstore, and that artist is going to get assimilated into the machine of contemporary art. Right. And so
do we see that where young artists are railing against the system, and then 20 years later they're in the system?
They are the system, exactly. Yeah. And
does that ever happen with pastors, Skye?
Not once.
I just zoned out there.
Where they're young and they're railing against the system and trying to reform, and then 20 years later they're in the system and they're trying to sell books.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Have you ever seen that?
I've seen that
happen.
Have you heard of a?
Sell my book.
There's an artist I cited in my first book named Ron English.
Ron English.
You know Ron English?
I don't. Tell me all about it.
So his site's called Propaganda.
There we go. See, perfect example.
Propaganda. So he takes a lot of consumer imagery, icons, Ronald McDonald, Mickey Mouse, you name it, and he subverts them. Like his Ronald McDonalds are morbidly obese.
I've seen this.
And like he has a famous picture, at least for him, of Mickey Mouse being crucified on a mousetrap. Or he's redone Da Vinci's Last Supper with all the characters from cereal boxes. and a lot of his point is to take that this is our new religion, is that we've taken these
and it can be.
corporate identities and we make those into our religions. But it's very subversive, both to religion to degree.
Is that what you make of Warhol and his use of brands? Was that part of making fun of the culture that we're in, or did he cross a line?
Yeah,
and he's just selling cans of soup.
Warhol's an interesting figure. Well, in regard to the artist that you mentioned, I can point you to an exact similar form of art in Russia before the collapse of the wall, and I'm like, then I respect it. If it's going to cost you,
right,
it's like, well, I mean, there's a sense in which like there's less freedom in certain societies. So when you have these artists who rage against the machine, like Ai Weiwei in China, has been tortured for his stances against his wider government. And so there's something in sense, sometimes that resistance is there. But of course, an artist like this can provide the critique, but do they have a solution?
Right.
And as important as that is, it's the genuine Last Supper that you need to turn to. Just like, thank you, Flying Spaghetti Monster, for, ripping apart some of our caricatures of God. But at the end of the day, you need something more than that. And Warhol, I think, is a perfect example of this. He is an advertiser himself, and there's, of course, the Campbell soup cans, right? This is, why not I just bring the gallery? Why don't I bring the gallery and the consumer reality together? Mm-hmm. Does that sanctify the consumer reality with the powers of art, or does that turn the art gallery into a palace of consumerism? This is a great question. We could get lost in it forever. But he gets tired of it. Yeah, please.
We have limits.
Yes. But at the end of his life, the argument of Jane Dillenberger, who wrote a book called The Religious Art of Andy Warhol, she says that this endlessly ironic artist who was doing everything just for sheer surface, he takes off his mask, and underneath that mask was Leonardo's The Last Supper. And I visited it once with my wife, just as art history majors at Wheaton. We had just graduated. We were in the Soho, that is the neighborhood of New York, the Guggenheim Museum there. There's a smaller one. And we walked into his series, and it was this wall-size images of Leonardo's The Last Supper and these silkscreen prints. And there were Wise potato chip logos slapped on top and General Electric slapped on top. So you might see he's just being ironic. Mm-hmm. But what Dillenberger says is he went to church every Sunday with his mother, And he had been attempting to say that the real power is not General Electric, but Christ. The real wisdom is not this potato chip, but Jesus. She makes a really interesting case that this was his last will and testament of sorts. And so there is a sense in which what happens after the critique, that you realize the need for something real. And Warhol...
When you knock it down, you need to build something else.
You do. And I think, I would push back against the argument. I think the Warhol, it might not be as straightforward as that, but I really appreciate that argument that she made.
Okay. A really good quote near the end of your talk. Christian faith helps us, quote, occupy the optocracy.
Again, now the book's on the remainder shelf.
Wow.
When I talk like that.
There's a T-shirt.
2 for 1.
Occupy the
optometrist.
Optometrist.
Yeah, we're going to have a bunch of our listeners at optometrists, like trashing the joint. No, that wasn't, we spelled it wrong. How does Christian faith help us disrupt a shallow visual culture?
Yeah, and the people, again, the Occupy movement has sort of fizzled, we might say. But of course it will fizzle because our culture is too powerful.
Yeah,
it's far too powerful.
You're just going to go back home because you need a shower. You can only occupy so long.
That's true. It's like and it's funny. I went down to New York and hung out with some of them for a little bit and was talking with them. And these are genuine people who are like, look, something's wrong. We got to fix something. And isn't that the truth? But what they're trying to do by, resist this wider culture, this is what Christianity can do that independently generated resources cannot. And so we have the opportunity through this violently, iconoclastic religion of ours that dares to say that even your sanctified self-image of yourself is something that Jesus doesn't want to negotiate with but destroy and remake you in his image.
Right. So Jesus is an iconoclast.
Well, in a way, he is. Of course, he doesn't give the product placement thumbs up to the Herod temple construction process. They would have loved to have an endorsement. And Jesus says that this is going to be a great building when it's completed.
1,000 jobs.
That's right. He's like, it's not going to work. And they don't like him for that. But he says, but I will be the temple, and you will be a temple too, which is kind of beautiful.
Right, but whatever else you've set up to yourself as your ultimate meaning, let's break it.
And I think that in a sense, I would imagine I'm trying to, again, the reason I'm using all this language is because I'm trying to speak to people who are speaking that way and speak in their language. And I would imagine them, if they would bother to listen to what I said, responding, but guess what? Christianity is the ultimate fueler of this consumer culture of ours. And I would say, I would think of the In-N-Out burger when you look on the bottom and there you see John 3:16.
Right.
As I toss the cup in the trash.
Your cup cares about your immortal soul. And that's comforting in a way.
But it is. And I'm glad that Christians are involved in that company. And I think there are certainly maybe you could say it's even worse to just have a company without any reference to God. There's something to be said for that. But to the people who push back in that regard and say, but Christianity fuels this consumer culture as well, I would say, it does. I confess to that. I am involved in that. And I also I want to be really clear that I'm not saying that business is bad, that we do need to have some degree of self-image. But I think that the battle lines have changed, whereas in the 1980s, we'd be fighting for the dignity of the free market because the reality of communism was a real thing.
Right.
Well, we won.
Right.
And the problem is that in that victory, I find myself looking to the Christian faith for means of pushing back. And when I have Katy Perry looking back at me, I'm like, okay, the battle lines have changed. We're maybe in a Romans 13 or Revelation 13 scenario here. But of course, the two are difficult to extricate from one another. They kind of blend together.
What can churches do, especially because this is your specialty, in the realm of art? Have you ever gone art shopping in a Christian bookstore?
Oh, dear.
We're not occupying the optocracy.
No.
With what we buy for ourselves in our homes. Have you ever been in a suburban Christian home that had challenging art on the walls?
Right. There was
a great inversion that happened, though, because for an awful lot of Western history, it was the church that was the patron of the arts. And then, it all changed.
Right.
But our
now
particular stream of Christianity is not one that tends to
we've
value
Thomas
anything.
Kincaided the arts.
We have.
Yeah.
We have.
We've precious moments the arts.
We've sentimentalized.
But how do we get out of that mindset? Quick, because we don't have a ton more time.
Good question.
Give us
Good
something.
question. I can give you a concrete example.
Ooh, good.
Okay. So, and this is my church. So, admittedly, it's a place that's dear to me, and so it's a small church called All Souls Church on Jewel Road here in Wheaton. There we go. Come on by, right? And so
You can't say that name too quickly, can you?
what do you mean? All Souls.
All Souls.
What does it smell? It sounds like Small Souls or something.
No,
never mind.
we're not
Oh
gonna,
my goodness!
Moving on.
Wow! Now you ruined it. Oh no! Oh wow! No. Okay. Wow.
Okay,
Look at
sorry.
this. Look at
Come
this.
back to your sanctified position that you were in.
Okay. Back to
I
that.
apologize
So-
for my ordained.
I'm not Anglican.
Okay. So nevertheless,
All Souls.
so in this church, it's just a typical. It's nothing dramatic from the outside, and you'd go inside, and it was just whitewashed walls, plain kind of square box, and Joel Sheasley, an amazing painter in the Wheaton Art Department who is retiring this week, went to Rome and saw this wonderful Roman church of San Clemente with a glorious apse mosaic of Jesus as the vine, John 15, with all of these plants blossoming from him. He saw that and he said, "Isn't that beautiful?" And some people might look at it and say, "Oh, gee, that's Catholic stuff." But he looked into the history of it and he realized that this San Clemente was created at a time in Rome in the 12th century where they were rediscovering the scriptures, where there was what we could fairly call an evangelical renewal movement in a corrupt Rome at that time. And that's what generated this beautiful mosaic. And he took that mosaic and he painted it on the back wall of All Souls Church. And it's the concluding image in the article in this book. And it is, I wish we had the full spread because it's amazing. And it is the resurrected Jesus as the tree of life in Chicagoland as the New Jerusalem.
Wow.
And it is to suggest that God is going to renew this entire world in the new creation, and suburban Illinois is going to be a part of that. And he has the sheep over his shoulders because he's the good shepherd and we are the one out of the 99 that were lost. And it is, my daughter and son have been baptized underneath that image. And it is also the image of a waterfall because it's the waters of baptism ushering forth and the beautiful Ezekiel.
Is that it?
That's it, exactly. And so it's wonderful, it's gold, it's beautiful. And so what we have is there's an example of the image of Jesus, but the rest of the church has white walls. And the front does not have an image of Jesus. It's just a cross to remind you it's both iconoclastic, but as you leave the church thinking to the second coming, there's an intelligent use of icons as well. So that's an example.
Wow. Sweet. We all need to go repaint our churches.
Go for it.
Well, but what you're, and I'm not going to go long, Phil, because you're already plucking
Yeah,
it.
that's okay. I'm
The plucking has begun.
I'm plucking.
But I think what you just described there is a church community that's intentional about what it's communicating or not communicating with its space.
Right.
And so few of our churches think that intentionally about it because we've been shaped by values that say function is all that matters. Just get a place where you can project things on a screen and use the visual culture around you and it shapes you, it warps you. It does, and that's what I think we've got a deficient view of formation because we just don't recognize the importance of the spaces in which we gather and worship and how they do form and shape our image of God, especially for children, but adults as well.
And the stuff that you buy and put on your walls at home. I mean, just think about it. We tend not to think. We tend to just grab stuff. And strumming aside, one plug for my discipline is even though we are faced with more visual challenges like never before, we're definitely more influenced by images than any generation in human history. It's just true. Right. But we also have more historical resources to go back to classic ancient Christian icons that are the very thing that Martin Luther was saying, that's an answer
not just breaking images, but pointing to true and good ones instead. So we have ways to do that as well.
Okay, cool. Do you have any of this stuff on your website? Is there a good resource for people to find more challenging iconography for the Christian faith?
Yes. Princeton University put all these wonderful Christian icons were found at the foot of where the Ten Commandments were given at Mount Sinai in a beautiful monastery called St. Catherine's. And when I was a graduate student, I felt all special because I could go up to the room and flip through the files, and it was only me that could do it. Well, lo and behold, they've now put them all online, and I can't feel special anymore.
Oh,
it's
that's good.
Isn't it wonderful?
It was going to your head.
Yeah, it was, and now I'm just a regular person. Oh well, it's gone. So the Sinai Icon Database is there, and you can look through the ancient trove of early Christian icons, and not all of them are something you would want in your life. You can also go onto the Google Art Project and stroll the early rooms of the Uffizi Gallery, just like Google Street View, totally free.
How do you spell Uffizi?
Uffizi. And that is the offices of the Medici, the most famous museum in Florence. And you can walk through and see these beautiful images that brought people to faith. This is the stuff that Michelangelo, after his flirting with these images, went back to and said these early Christian icons can have a renewing force in an art-drunk Florence, and they can have a renewing force in our culture as well.
So go to the Uffizi Gallery online.
Absolutely.
And go to the, what was the other one?
The Sinai Icon Database.
Sinai Icon Database.
No, it's just wonderful.
We'll look for links for those, and we'll get them to people.
There we go.
All right, I got to wrap it up. Oh, we got a guy. His name is Matt. He's got a bow tie, but not a hat. But even without all of that, he can teach us about art. We can buy stuff that's got a challenge the normal stuff that is in our artistic melange.
Oh, we'll give it to him.
Thank you. And we can put stuff on our walls that will make us think more about our faith. And might actually look better also. And could actually feed a starving artist who's not going to get picked up by any Christian bookstore ever in the entire world. So thank you, Matt.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.